Video number 2 of my series about the full rule set of the Guns of Gettysburg, a wargame that depicts the famous Battle of Gettysburg, the turning point of the American Civil War in July 1863. A game by Rachel Simmons, published by Mercury Games. And in this second video, we will learn how to fight. In other words, the most important thing to know when you play a wargame. As we saw in the first video, in the Guns of Gettysburg, enemy units hinder each other's movement to the point of stopping any further maneuver. In this very simple example, blue unit cannot move because it is in red unit's field of fire, and the same is true in reverse, so both units are totally locked. They cannot move anymore, and so one way to end this situation is to attack your opponent. When does it happen? How do movement and combat relate to each other within the turn sequence? We will see that later in a subsequent video. For the moment, just let's suppose it's time for red player, Confederate player, to attack. Basically, you should see attack as a kind of movement, a movement that aims to take an opponent's position. Combat unfolds in three main steps. 1. Red player, because it's red player's turn, declares what unit attacks what enemy. Note that if red player can fight several combats, he doesn't have to declare them all at once. He can just resolve a first attack and see its result before deciding any further combat. 2. Red player actually moves his unit to the position it attacks. This is called the assault. And 3. He resolves the attack. This resolution is very simple. The attacker reveals his unit and checks its strength. This strength is the number of flags printed on the block. 2 in this example. Minus the defender's strength, the defender's number of flags. 2 also in this example. So the net result is 2 minus 2, 0. But the Confederate player always gets a +1 when he is the attacker. See that as the offensive superiority of Confederate's command. At Gettysburg, the Confederate player is the main attacker. This +1 is some kind of incentive for him to attack. If the net result is greater than 0, the attacker wins. If it is 0 or lower, the defender wins. And the overall consequence is that the loser must withdraw. There are a lot of rules to determine where and when a unit can withdraw, but for the moment, let's say the loser unit leaves its position to the winner. So keep in mind that the first and the main reason to attack is to take your enemy's position. The Guns of Gettysburg is a game of movement and position. You don't attack to kill, you attack to drive your enemy out of its position. Fine, but as you know, unfortunately, battle tends to kill people. And so, beyond this first result, of who takes the position and who withdraws, players must determine their human losses. There must be losses in every combat. If the final result is 1, 0 or -1, both players take losses. But if the result is 2 or more, only the defender takes losses, and if the result is -2 or less, only the attacker takes losses. Each command in the game is represented as 2 or 3 blocks with the same name. 2 blocks for the Confederate player, 3 blocks for the Union player. These blocks have 2 flags each, so the same strength of 2 points each. And these flags are colored. That means that the unit is full strength and didn't incur any losses yet. Other blocks with the same name depict these units with losses. These reduced blocks show gray flags, 1 or 2 gray flags. When a block incurs losses, it must be replaced by a reduced block, a block with gray flags. So here, if you remember, the result was +1 for the Confederate attack. Howard Blue Union bloc did withdraw, and now both blocks from both sides must incur losses. They must be replaced by reduced grey blocks. For Howard's blue bloc, there is no choice because all his reduced grey blocks have one flag. So blue bloc is replaced by a one flag grey bloc from the same command, the same name. The previous full strength block is eliminated from the game and will never be brought back to the map. For red player, there is a choice because he has two kinds of reduced blocks with two or one grey flag. So he takes one of each in both hands and lets his opponent draw one at random. And now, even if both players incurred losses, red player ends stronger than blue. Note that the replacement block is kept secret face down, so here blue player doesn't know if red replacement block is a one or two flag block. If later in the game red player attacks again the same blue block, both players reveal their forces, and this time red has a strength of 2 with 2 flags, but blue has only 1. And always Confederate players gets a +1 because when he attacks, the Confederate player always gets a bonus of +1. So, red wins again, blue block should withdraw, but it's not necessary because look, only blue player incurs losses and when a single flag unit incurs losses, it is eliminated. Howard's blue unit is eliminated. If a 2 grey flag block incurs losses, it is replaced by a 1 grey flag block with no random draw. Beware, every command has a limited number of reduced blocks. Here, for example, let's suppose that a second Johnson unit enters the game and that later it incurs losses. Because there is no 2 grey flag block available anymore, it is replaced directly by a 1 grey flag block, with no other possible choice. When a block is replaced by a 2 grey flag block, it does not change its strength, while a 1 grey flag block has a strength of only 1. But even worse, a 1 flag block cannot declare an attack. Not at all, it can just move and defend. Okay, and now perhaps you see the problem. At the beginning of the game, all units from both players have 2 flags. There is no such thing as a 3 flag unit. And when a 2 flag unit attacks another 2 flag unit, the result is 0, so the attacker loses, his unit withdraws, and both attacking and defending units are reduced. This is a little different if the attacker is the Confederate player because he gets a bonus of +1 in attack. And without any randomness, without any die roll, these results are 100% sure. Confederate player will win all his attacks and Union player will not. Quite strange, isn't it? Luckily, there are some tactical solutions. First, there is terrain. You remember the small triangles on some positions. These triangles show a steep slope. So here, blue unit is on top of a slope and it will be more difficult for red unit to attack uphill. More difficult means a penalty of -1. If a red unit attacks altogether, this gives a net result of 0, so red unit loses and must withdraw, and both units incur losses. Okay, that means that if Union player chooses a good defensive position on top of a steep slope, it can resist all Confederate attacks. Also, if the defender is on a position obstructed on both sides, it also gets a -1. Beware, this works only if the position is obstructed on both sides. Only such deep woods offer a significant defensive advantage. And some position can be double obstructed and on top of a steep slope for a total penalty of -2. And that means, in this example, that red player loses his attack even against a 1 flag defender. And wait, here are some more tactical tools to build your attack. First, you can flank your opponent. Flanking requires two units. One unit is actually attacking, while the other unit is threatening the defender's flank. You flank your opponent when this second support unit can reach your opponent's rear in a two-step move or less. This red unit wants to attack this blue unit, and let's suppose there is another red unit already adjacent to the blue defender. This support red unit doesn't take part in the attack, but because it could reach blue unit's rear with a two-step move, it is flanking blue unit and red main attack gains a bonus of +1. But flanking works both ways. If there is another blue unit here, this blue unit threatens the attacker's rear with a hypothetical two-step move, and this kind of defensive flanking gives a penalty of -1 to the attack. As you see, flanking is always evaluated considering the defensive position where the battle actually takes place, not the attacker's starting position. And note also that both flanking units don't take part in the battle. They won't actually move and they won't withdraw nor take losses after the battle. In any way, they are just supporting units. Okay, now some examples to be sure you understand. Here, a somewhat reckless red unit attacks its enemy straight ahead, but doing so, it offers its flanks to the Union threat. And because it is threatened on both its left and right flanks, it incurs a penalty of -2. And note that this is a maximum. You can get only one flanking bonus or penalty for each side, left and right. If, for example, blue player has another unit here, he doesn't get any further flanking support. He already has the maximum of 1 per side. Next example, again, red unit attacks straight ahead. But this time, blue player doesn't get any flanking support because the blue adjacent unit would need 3 steps to threaten red unit's rear. The obstructed symbol in front of it forbids flanking. And note that in this other similar case, flanking is okay because the obstructed symbol is faced the other way. The obstructed symbol is not oriented toward the area the support unit would have to cross in order to reach the attacker's rear. And last example, here blue player cannot get any flanking advantage because his potential support unit is facing the wrong way. To be in a flanking position, a support unit must be able to reach the attacker's rear in 2 steps, but by crossing first its own front area. You cannot flank backwards. And that's it. Here are the basics of combat. You should be used to these bonus and penalty calculations because in this game, battles are not based on the luck of the dice, but on sheer tactics and planning. And the outcome of a battle is often the result of a decisive +1 or -1. Good. Until now, we have considered that the attacker always attacks straight ahead. But it's time to see the more general case. When and where can your units attack? First, the easiest case. A unit can always attack any position that borders its front area. Beware, this is not as simple as it seems. In this example, because of the obstructed symbol just in front of it, red unit doesn't have any field of fire. It doesn't stop blue unit's movement. We could say that it doesn't see it, but a unit can always attack any position that borders its front area. And so, in this example, red unit can attack blue unit, and vice versa. Blue unit can also attack red unit. But a unit can also attack any position bordering its field of fire. Remember what we saw in my previous video. Thanks to a ridge symbol in front of it, this red unit has a huge field of fire. And so red unit can attack this blue unit, or this one, or even this one. And finally, a unit can attack another unit whose field of fire can reach its own position. If you can fire at me, I can attack you. And this third case opens some very interesting opportunities. Look at this example. Because of the intervening ridge, red unit's field of fire doesn't expand to the left. So, blue unit's position is not bordering its field of fire, and red unit cannot attack it according to case 2. But, from the other side, thanks to a special dotted line, blue unit's field of fire expands down to red unit's position. And so, because red unit's position borders blue unit's field of fire, according to case 3, red unit can attack blue position. And if you think about it, it's quite logical. Because of blue's field of fire, red unit cannot move. And you can just remember that if someone prevents you from moving, you can attack him. It's quite logical, but it gives some strange cases. Look at this one. Because red unit's position is obviously bordering blue unit's field of fire, red unit can attack blue unit. Even if, because of an obstructed symbol just in front of it, red unit has no field of fire at all. Okay, take a deep breath and get your head back in the right place, because now that you know who you can attack, how can you do that? In our last example, red unit can attack blue unit, but how is it possible, knowing that such a movement would cost 3 steps? 1 step for each area plus 1 for the obstructed symbol. The trick is that even if attack is a kind of movement, it is a movement that doesn't cost any step. If you can attack a position according to the 3 cases we just learned, you can move your unit to its target as part of that attack, regardless of the cost in steps. So, attack is a movement, but it is not at all a regular movement. It is not constrained by step cost. And of course, it is not blocked by enemy units or their fields of fire, because attack is just the way to get rid of such an enemy unit that stops your movement. And finally, before I go on, I want to emphasize what may seem like a detail, but look at this example. Here, blue unit is quite surrounded by 2 red units, one in its front, the other in its rear. Without any red units, blue unit as a regular movement could go wherever it wants, to the front but also to the rear. But here it cannot use regular movement because it is stopped by enemy fields of fire. Instead, it can attack. Attack, as we know, is very close to standard movement, but when attacking, the first area you cross must always be your front area. So here, blue unit has no choice. It can only attack the red unit in its front. It cannot turn back and attack the other unit to its rear. Okay, now that you know who you can attack and how you can attack, your goal is to optimize all possible bonuses to win your combat. And a good way to do that is through group attack. A group attack is when several units attack the same position. The simplest case is when several attacking blocks start from the same position. Red player here can decide to attack with 1, 2 or even his 3 blocks. The attack goes on exactly as usual, the only difference being that the attacking player must declare a leading block. It can be any attacking block and the player puts it in front. And then only this leading block will be used to determine the result of the attack. Here, even if the attacker moves a total of 5 flags, its attack strength is only 2 because only the leading block is used. Note that red player could not have declared the 1 flag unit as his leading block because the leading block must always have 2 flags. The 1 flag unit can still take part in the attack as long as it is not the leading block. In fact, the attacking player only reveals the leading block and keeps the others secret. Okay, that's fine, but if only the leading block matters, why should I do a group attack? In fact, there is one main advantage. If the attacker attacks with more than 1 block, he cannot be threatened by a flanking enemy. So, in this example, if blue player has another unit besides, this support unit doesn't give to red attack the -1 flanking penalty, because a red player attacks with more than 1 block. Beware, every word counts. In defense means that there is no such restriction for flanking in attack. In the same example, if red player has a support unit that gives him a flanking advantage, he gets it even if there are several blocks in defense. And note that if there are several blocks in defense, only one counts in the resolution, freely chosen by the defender. It is the defender's leading block, and the other blocks stay secret. In a group attack, attacking blocks can come from different positions, and so a group attack can be used to regroup your units. Note that any block belonging to the attacking force must be eligible according to the three cases we previously saw. In this example, red player can declare a group attack against the leftmost blue unit and move his three blocks as one simultaneous movement regardless of any restriction and step cost, as long as all units conform to one of the three attack cases. Note in this example that, of course, there is no flanking advantage for blue defender because several blocks are attacking. Okay, that's cute, but there is an even more useful way of group attack. You can declare an attack against two adjacent positions. And in this case, you resolve both attacks separately, but this counts as one attack. For example here, red player declares a group attack and moves his units. Then he decides in what order both battles are resolved. Let's say he begins with the rightmost one. He uses the standard method, red wins with a result of +1. Note that there is no flanking for this battle because both blue and red adjacent units cannot threaten the opposite unit without moving through an enemy block. In other words, they are fighting themselves and cannot support the other battle on the ridge next door. Red player wins this first battle only thanks to his Confederate attacker +1 bonus. So, blue player loses and must withdraw and both sides incur losses. They draw reduced unit at random if needed. We already know all this. But, and that's the point of doing a group attack, because red player won the first attack, he gets a bonus of +1 for the second resolution. Players reveal their leading blocks, and red players win again, but this time with a result of 2 instead of 1, thanks to this group attack bonus. So the leftmost blue unit must also withdraw, and this time only blue unit incur losses. No losses for red unit. And so you understand the advantage. If the red player had made 2 separate attacks, he would have suffered losses with both his units, whereas with a group attack, only his first unit suffers losses. But wait, there is more. In this other example, red player declares a group attack against 2 adjacent blue positions. And note that even if red player has 3 units, he cannot declare a group attack against 3 targets. No. A group attack can target a maximum of 2 adjacent enemy units. So, red player can attack the 2 leftmost blue units or the 2 rightmost ones. If he wants to attack both units at the ends or all 3 units, he can do that, but not as a single group attack. A group attack targets 2 adjacent enemy units, period. Okay, so he attacks the 2 leftmost units, and he resolves 2 battles. Let's say he chooses to resolve against the center unit first. Fine. But look, because he attacks with only 1 block in the center, blue player can threaten his flank and charge a penalty of -1. And so, the result in the center is 0, and red player loses this first half of his group attack. And both players take their losses. Then, red player resolves the second battle, which is, don't forget, the second half of the same group attack. This time, no defensive flank threat, so red player wins with losses. And here we are, listen carefully, in a group attack, if only one attack is successful, the whole group attack is successful. A group attack is always treated as a whole, and one success is enough for a global success. Here, both blue units will have to withdraw even if the first one did defend successfully. And now, finally, here is the great magic trick of group attack. You can declare a group attack against two adjacent positions, even if one of them is empty. Wow, it sounds nice, isn't it? But what's the point? First, you can attack an empty position to put your unit in a place where it will threaten the main attack's flank. Here, both units move as part of their group attack, and only one battle is resolved. But in that battle, the leftmost unit threatens blue unit's flank and gives an attack bonus of +1. Of course, red player doesn't get the additional bonus for having won his first battle because, in this case, there is only one real battle. But note in this example that the red block attacking the empty position could be a one flag only block. Even if you cannot attack with such a one flag block, you can still use it against an empty position. Without any defender, this is not considered as a real attack. One last example. Here, red player cannot declare a group attack against both blue units because they are not adjacent. Red player would like to move a unit into the gap between blue units, but he cannot do that through regular movement because both his units are in enemy fields of fire that stop any movement. So, he can declare a group attack with the empty position as a target. Such an attack gives him a flank advantage, of course, but also it just gets his unit where it wanted to go. Beware in this case, if red player loses his battle, both his units will have to withdraw. In order to win a group attack, at least one battle must be won. And finally, look at this situation. Here, the leftmost red unit can attack blue position. And red player would like to declare a group attack to bring his second unit in the attack against the adjacent empty position. This would give him a flanking bonus and keep his units together. But because of this obstructed symbol, the rightmost red unit doesn't have any field of fire at all. But according to the third case, this unit can attack even without any field of fire if it is itself in his target's field of fire. So this situation must be treated as if there were a unit in the attacked empty position. If there had been a unit in that position, it would have had the right to attack according to case 3, so it has the right to attack this empty position as part of a group attack. Of course, you need at least one true enemy to declare an attack. You cannot declare an attack against two empty positions. Okay, now you start to feel comfortable with combat, but still, there are some small special cases you have to know. And first, I'd like to be sure you understand the pace of combat. As you already know, attack is a kind of movement. We will see later when combat occurs inside the turn sequence. But when it's time to attack, a player can attack with his units one by one, resolving an attack before deciding the next one. But, and this is the special case, a given position can be attacked only once per turn. Here, red player declares an attack against the blue position. But because of the steep slope, red player loses and must withdraw after both players take losses. We will see later exactly how units withdraw, but here the question is that red player would like to declare a second attack with his other unit against the same position, now that blue unit is somewhat crippled. But no, he cannot do that, because there can be only one attack per turn against any given position. Red player should have declared a group attack to get a flanking bonus and win the combat, but this is another story. Next case, red unit attacks blue position, but from its rear. Blue unit is oriented toward the bottom of the map, and in this case, when a unit is attacked from its rear, its basic strength is 0, whatever the number of flags on its block. Here, red unit has 2 flags versus 0 with its +1 Confederate bonus and still the -1 penalty for attacking up a steep slope. Red wins attacking from the rear is always a very good option. But beware, you cannot attack both from the rear and from the front. In this example, red player must choose. He cannot make a group attack with both units. The reason for this is historical. Firing at the same enemy from both sides was dangerous and prone to friendly crossfire, so you cannot do that. And there is another historical special rule, the last one. If a block attacks and takes an enemy position, as we will see, the enemy must withdraw and it will withdraw. And if all this was just a game, there would be nothing to stop the losing side from fighting back in the next round. But no, this is not just a game, this is a historical simulation, and in real battles, after some local success, the enemy is disorganized, enough not to be able to fight back quickly in an efficient way. So, in game terms, if an attack is successful, that same position cannot be group attacked next turn, and it cannot either be attacked from its rear. Still, it can be attacked next turn, but only by one block, not a group attack, and from its front. And that's all for regular combat. There are still many developments to be seen, rules about withdrawal, for example, or about combat within the global sequence of a turn, but I keep all these for my next video. Because now we must tackle the last huge piece of the art of battle, that is, the use of artillery. Artillery in this game is represented as triangular cardboard tokens. Don't ask me where players get these tokens from, we will see that later and we'll assume for now that each player has a secret hand of 8 random artillery tokens. Fine, and so what's the essence of artillery tactics? You remember this panel, we will cut it in two halves. To the right, the resolution, and to the left, the battle chronology, because the most important thing about artillery is how it changes the battle chronology. At the very beginning of the chronology, the attacker declares one attack. Note that he doesn't have to declare all his attacks at once, he declares one attack and does unfold the whole chronology down to its resolution before deciding any further attack. Declaring one attack means declaring all attacking units and defending positions. In case of a group attack, two adjacent positions can be targeted by several attacking blocks. The attacker must declare one block as the leading block for this attack. If it's a group attack against two positions, there must be two leading blocks. And these leading blocks must have two flags. For now, the attacker doesn't reveal these blocks, they stay face down. Then, step 2. The defender can declare his artillery support. He just plays artillery tokens from his hand to the map, face down, on the defending position, the triangle's tip facing the opponent. There are some rules to follow, and the first one is that a player can play a maximum of 2 tokens on one position. Then, step 3. The attacker also declares his artillery support, and again, 2 tokens max per position. We will see very soon how to choose the best tokens for your attack or your defense, but for now, go on. Step 4. Both players reveal their tokens. And step 5. The attacker fires his artillery. And it's getting complicating. As we will see, not all blocks can play any artillery tokens. There are rules to follow, but for now, let's keep it as simple as possible. Let's forget what is printed on these tokens and let's look only at the gun symbols. First, the attacker. His goal is to use his artillery as a support to his attack. The rule is that 3 guns give an attack bonus of +1. And that's why the attacker fires his artillery. In this example, red player would have a bonus of +1 to his combat. So players just note this +1 bonus and they apply it afterwards to the ensuing battle resolution. In the battle sequence, the next step is the defender's artillery fire. Let's forget the attacker and see just what defender artillery fire looks like. And defender fire is very different because for each group of 3 guns, the defender inflicts 1 loss to the attacker. You remember, he picks at random between 2 reduced blocks, and his former 2-colored flag block can become a 2-gray flag or a 1-gray flag block. And so, the main thing to understand here is that there is a deep asymmetry between offensive and defensive artillery fire. In attack, artillery gives battle resolution bonuses. In defense, artillery inflicts losses to the opponent. Now let's go deeper. Step 4. Both players reveal their artillery tokens. Step 5. Red player would like to get a +1 bonus in the ensuing battle thanks to one group of 3 guns. But he gets this bonus only if there is no defending artillery. If there is a defending artillery, his bombardment becomes instead a counter battery fire, and he destroys 1 defending artillery token for each group of 3 guns. So here, he can destroy 1 enemy token. He can choose the one he wants. Of course, he chooses the most powerful 2-gun token. And thus, to make it simple, attacker's artillery first destroys defender's artillery, and only if there is no defender's artillery anymore, it gives bonuses to the ensuing battle. Then, just after step 5, the attacker removes all his artillery tokens. This is again a great asymmetry between attack and defense. When the defender can fire his artillery in step 6, there is no attacking artillery anymore. The defender never does counter battery fire. So now step 6. With only 1 gun left, the defender has no group of 3 guns anymore and he inflicts no loss at all. Okay, so if there's one thing to remember, it's that artillery fire is very asymmetrical and depends strongly on whether you are the attacker or the defender. Now let's go even deeper. Following the previous example, I can hear you asking, with a maximum of 2 tokens per position, how is it possible for the attacker to eliminate more than 1 enemy token and to get a battle bonus despite defending artillery? It is possible because artillery fire can be far more complex than you think. Let's consider this situation. Step 1, red player declares his attack. This will be a group attack. 2 red blocks attack 2 adjacent blue positions. Note that the 3rd red unit on the left doesn't attack, so it will stay there while the other 2 blocks will assault their targets. Never forget that attack is a kind of movement. If a unit attacks, it must assault and move toward the defending position. Okay, step 2. And the rule here is that any unit that can see an area actually crossed by an attacking unit can fire artillery. So here, all 3 blue units can fire, even the rightmost one, which is not itself a target of the attack. The unit sees a red block assaulting through its field of fire, so it can fire on it. And note that the blue player doesn't have to specify who is firing at whom. For now, the rule just tells which units can play artillery tokens. And so, 2 tokens max per position. Blue player can play up to 6 tokens. If you remember that he has a total of 8 tokens in his hand, this is huge. Step 3. Here the rule is that attackers' units can fire on their attack's targets, but also on any enemy unit that fires artillery. So on any unit with some artillery token in front of it. And even an attacker's unit that doesn't take part in the attack can fire if such a valid target is in its field of fire. And so even the leftmost red unit can fire and play artillery tokens, no more than 2 tokens per position. And again, units don't have to specify now on what enemy positions they are firing. Step 4, all tokens are flipped face up. Step 5, red player must consider each firing position independently from the others, and there can be only a maximum of 3 guns firing from each position. So, you would like to say, all in all, if I sum all 3 positions, I have 8 guns. But no, with a maximum of 3 guns per position, 1 gun is useless on the leftmost position and red player ends up with 7 guns in total. Now red player must decide his targets. His units can fire on targets in their fields of fire. So, his 2 units at the bottom of the screen can fire on any enemy position, but his leftmost unit can only fire at one target, the one adjacent to it. And so, red player should fire on each enemy position, but doing so, he would get 2 guns on the 2 rightmost opponents, and 2 guns are not enough. You need 3 guns to eliminate 1 token. So, he prefers to concentrate his fire and to eliminate 2 tokens. Okay, and just after step 5, the attacker removes all his artillery tokens. And step 6, defender's artillery can fire on any attacking unit that crosses their field of fire. So just before step 6, it's good to advance attacker's unit to show who is moving and where to. You should remember the attacks that red player declared on step 1, and so attacker's movement takes place here just before step 6. Fine, step 6, defender's artillery fire. And beware, a unit that is the declared target of an attack must fire on the unit that attacks it. It cannot fire elsewhere. So here the 2 leftmost blue units have no choice and must fire each on their own attacker. And that makes 2 guns per red unit, and you need 3 guns to inflict 1 loss. Hopefully there is a 3rd unit, the rightmost one, with 3 guns, because 3 is the maximum. It is not targeted by any attack, so it can fire on any red unit, but only in its field of fire. So, no choice again, it can fire only on the rightmost red unit. And if you do the math, that gives 2 guns against the leftmost red unit and 5 guns against the rightmost one. But it's time to talk about ridges. Ridges are little gun symbols printed on the map. A ridge is an artillery defensive bonus. So, ridge symbols on the attacker's positions are irrelevant. On the defender's position, the defender gets +1 gun for each ridge gun symbol up to the limit of the number of actual guns he played with his tokens. Here, for example, on the leftmost position, this gives a bonus of +2 guns. There are 3 ridge gun symbols, but because blue player has only a 2 gun token on this position, he can get a maximum bonus of +2. And the same for the adjacent position. So, 4 guns give 1 loss, and next position, 7 guns give 2 losses. On the first loss, the player randomly draws a 1 flag unit, and the second loss eliminates it right away. And now, at last, after all artillery fires, we can go on with the last step, step 7, battle resolution. Red player declared a group attack on 2 blue adjacent positions, but his right unit has been eliminated by artillery fire, so only 1 position is actually attacked. And note that red last attacking unit is a 1 flag unit. Such a unit cannot be declared as the leading block in an attack, but here it's okay because this unit had 2 flags when the attack was declared on step 1. 1 point for 1 flag, +1 because it's a Confederate attack, -2 for 2 blue flags, -1 again because the adjacent blue unit threatens red flank. Red player loses and both players takes 1 loss. With only 1 flag remaining, red unit is eliminated. And that's it, a real disaster for the Confederacy. Fine, you got the basics. You can handle a full battle with artillery support. But your bag is not full yet. Let's bring some other refinements with just a few more examples. Red player is building a large attack against two adjacent blue positions. This is a group attack. Blue player, the defender, can first play artillery tokens in support, but only on his first position. He plays only one token. The rightmost position is blocked by an obstruction symbol. This blue unit doesn't have any field of fire in the area in front of it, so it cannot play any artillery token. Red player, the attacker, can play his own artillery support. But here he gets a special rule. The attacking player can play support artillery against an enemy that is not in his field of fire, provided that the firing position is itself in its target field of fire. You can see this rule as, if you see me, I can fire at you. The leftmost red unit has no enemy unit in its own field of fire, but it is itself in its enemy fields of fire, because blue unit takes advantage of a ridge to see further away. So, red unit can play artillery tokens. Beware, this special rule doesn't allow fire through an obstructed symbol. If there had been an obstructed symbol in front of red unit, it would not have been able to play any artillery token. Okay, now players both reveal. With his first position, red player eliminates the blue token. 3 guns for 1 token. And then, the second position gives a +1 advantage in the ensuing combat resolution. I stop here this example, you see the point. This is the reason why the attacker plays artillery tokens, to get battle bonuses +1 per group of 3 guns. Next, in this new situation, red player wants to launch a massive attack against this blue position. This is a group attack. And beware, red player must declare his leading unit now, at the very beginning of the process. He declares this one, I show it with a white border. Then blue player plays his defensive artillery tokens. Then red player can do the same, but in his hand he has only 3 tokens available, these 3 tokens. These are very special tokens. We will see later what they are made for, but just note for now that they are not guns. They give no artillery support at all. But they are the only tokens red player has in his hand, and he must play at least 1 token per attacking unit. This is an absolute rule. Whenever a player attacks, he must play at least 1 token per attacking unit. So, no choice here, red player must play these 3 tokens. He doesn't play them on his attacking position because these tokens are worthless here, but still, he must play them and lose them. Next, he reveals red player has no artillery to fire with. Then blue player can fire. He has 3 guns. But with a ridge bonus of 3, that gives a firepower of 6. He can inflict 2 losses on the attacker, and note that he cannot split these 2 losses between 2 targets. You cannot split artillery fire from a given position. So let's say that blue player fires on red's leading unit. First loss, bad luck, the leading block goes directly to a 1 flag block, and so the second loss eliminates it. And finally, red player must resolve his attack without his leading block. And when this happens, the attacker must fight with a strength of 0. He doesn't use his next unit in the attacking group, no. Only the leading block strength can be used, and because this leading block has been eliminated by artillery fire, the whole group must attack with a strength of 0 for a final result of -1. Next and last example, this one will be quick. Red attacks blue. According to this special case, we know that red player can play artillery tokens on both his positions, even if the rightmost one has no field of fire toward the enemy. Because red unit is itself in his target's field of fire, it can play an artillery token. Fine, we already know that. But now, let's consider the opposite situation. The previous special case doesn't work for the defender, and the rightmost blue unit should not be able to play any artillery token because it has no eligible target in its field of fire. But there's another special rule for this case. For artillery purpose, a defending unit can consider the extended field of fire it would have if it was on a ridge position. And it can play artillery tokens against any target in this virtual field of fire, but with half strength. In our example, the blue rightmost unit can play tokens even if it has no attacking enemy crossing its field of fire. Because red unit crosses the extended field of fire it would have if it was on a ridge, it can play tokens but at half strength. Let's suppose that blue player, the defender, has only one gun tokens in his hand, so he plays two of them on each position. This gives 2 guns plus 1 gun equals a total of 3 guns, enough to inflict 1 loss to the attacking red unit. And that's it. That's how you fight in the Guns of Gettysburg. All in all, this looks like something like that. Here are all the rules you need to handle a combat. And it's gorgeous, isn't it? But I know that some of you are getting nervous. Yes, they are getting nervous because they remember that there's still one detail that I did not mention at all. And yes, they have reason to be nervous because it's not over, my friends. I still have to teach you a few things. So far, I've told you that tokens look like this. But in reality, we all know that they look more like this, with a lot of names, stars and numbers written on them. And that's because artillery units are attached to commands and cannot be used equally by everyone. Let's put the picture in a simple way. The first kind of tokens are very special because they don't depict any guns. They cannot be used as artillery support during combat. Their only use in combat is that because the attacker must play as many tokens as the units he commits in the battle, he can play these special tokens and discard them just to comply with this prerequisite. Of course, these tokens have another purpose, and we will see in my fourth video what these tokens are really made for. The next one bears the word any, so it's easy. This token can be played on any unit. Nothing more to say. Then, some tokens show the name of a command. These tokens can only be played on a unit with the same name. But more than that, you need 2 units of this name to be able to play the token. 1 is not enough. And note that the number of stars on Confederate tokens is irrelevant. It shows the number of this command core, but what matters here is just the name of the commander. In this example, whether McLaws, the red unit, is attacking or defending, it cannot play this McLaws token because this name token needs 2 units of the same name. With the second McLaws unit, it's okay. And hopefully this rule is a little bit flexible because the second unit can be on an adjacent position. And note in this example that the second unit doesn't and cannot participate in the combat. But it doesn't matter. Only by being there, adjacent, it allows the first unit to play an artillery token with the name McLaws. Next, some Confederate red tokens show a core numbers in Roman numerals. This is the same number as the number of stars, and the Confederate player can play such a token only if he has 3 units from that same core. Note that the number of flags on units doesn't matter, only the number of stars, that is, the core the unit belongs to. As previously, units don't have to actually participate in the combat and can be on adjacent positions. And because 3 units are needed, the last one can be adjacent to an adjacent position, let's say adjacent in second. Beware, this situation, for example, doesn't allow the play of this token because the middle unit doesn't belong to core 2. Core 2 units must all be adjacent to each other. And finally, the union player, and only the union player, has special reserve tokens. And in order to play such a token, he needs 3 units of any name. 3 units on the same position or adjacent to each other. Okay, so this panel shows what units you need on the field to be able to use such and such artillery token. And in the one hand, it's just a way to force you to organize your troops according to their hierarchical organization and to keep a certain historical realism in the deployment of your troops. And there is another historical requirement to meet. As we will see in the next video, at Gettysburg, units from both sides were slowly coming to the battlefield, hour after hour, day after day. At the very beginning of the game, the battlefield is quite empty with no unit of either side but some Union cavalry. Artillery units are attached to their command or to their corps, so even if you draw an artillery token, you can use it only if enough of its corresponding units are already on the battlefield. For tokens with the word any or with a simple command name, no problem, you can play them as soon as you draw them. But for tokens with the core numbers, you can play them only if a sufficient part of that core has already entered the map. This organization in core relates only to the Confederate player. There are 3 commands in each core, so 3 different command names with the same core number. And the Confederate player can play an artillery token associated with a given core number only if 2 commands with the same number are already on the map. 2 commands out of the 3. And, if you think about it, that's some kind of a natural consequence of the first requirement. On the Confederate side, there are only 2 units in each command, so to meet the first requirement, that is to have 3 adjacent units from the same core number, you must have at least 2 commands from the same core already on the battlefield. Okay, for the Union player, it is more restrictive. The Union player has no core, but he has some powerful reserve tokens. But he can only play them from the moment he has already 4 commands on the map. Before that, his army is not yet fully engaged in the Battle of Gettysburg, and his reserve artillery is not yet operational. Beware, these 4 commands must be infantry commands. The buffered cavalry command that is in play from the beginning of the game does not count toward these 4 commands requirement. And that's it, and as you understand now, it's not so easy to play your artillery tokens even if you got them in your hand. You must keep your troops organized on the battlefield and must collect the tokens you need in advance. You must foresee and plan your big offensive in advance. At start, each player has 8 random tokens in hand. And basically, every turn, each player draws 1 or several tokens from his pool. More details about that in the next video. What is important here is that every time a player draws new tokens, he must discard some so that his hand does not exceed 8 tokens. Tokens in the discard pile are not lost. When a player's pool is empty, all tokens in the discard pile are brought back to form a new pool. But still, beware. Here are all tokens in the game. 39 for red Confederate player, 40 for blue Union player. Let's say, for example, that red player drew this Johnson 2-gun token in his starting hand. This is the only Johnson 2-gun token in the game. And if Johnson does not enter the map during the first game turns, red player will be tempted to discard this token, thinking that he will get it back when his pool is restored. But with more than 30 tokens in his pool, it will take a very long time, more than half of the game. And so you begin to understand that there is a real dimension of hand management in this game. Players must bet on some commands, they must make choices, and especially with core and reserve tokens. Blue player, for example, can be tempted to discard his reserve tokens as long as he doesn't have 4 commands in play. But when he has his 4 commands in play, if he has discarded all his reserve tokens, it will be too late. Okay, but wait, it's not over. As you remember, when you attack, you must play a number of tokens at least equal to the number of units you attack with. You must, this is not an option. If you have enough valid tokens to play them as actual artillery support, that's fine. But if you don't, you must still play invalid tokens that will be lost without adding any benefit to the battle. And of course, attacking player can also play more tokens than required. And all such attack tokens are lost to a special discard pile, and as we will see, they will be out of the game and never recovered again. And here also you must really understand what that means. If red player wants to attack with Johnson with effective tokens, only 5 are usable, 2 with the name of Johnson and 3 with his core number. There are also 6 any tokens, but believe me, they will quickly vanish after some attacks. So if Johnson attacks with his 2 units, he will spend 2, 3 or 4 tokens out of his 5 only effective tokens. In other words, Johnson can only attack once or twice with the full artillery support. Only once or twice during the full game. After that, of course, he can still attack, but by playing other unsuitable tokens that will be lost without any effect. In this game, a full effective attack is hard to plan and you must build it in advance, just like a real general on the field, and this is why this game is so realistic and so immersive. And what about defense tokens? As we know, in a battle, defensive player can also play artillery tokens in support. The difference being that for him, this is not mandatory. The defender, if he wants, can play no token at all. Okay. That being said, as you know, in defense, 2 things can happen. First, some defensive tokens can be destroyed by the attacker's support artillery. These destroyed tokens go to the same special discard pile from where they will be out of the game. And all tokens that were not destroyed stay on the field and can inflict some damages to the attacker. We already know all that. But what is important here is that these surviving defensive support tokens are discarded to a second special discard pile, and this token won't be out of the game. The defender will get them back into his hand at the end of the turn. So, you see the big difference. The same Johnson token as before, if it is used as a defense, is not lost and it goes back to the player's hand at the end of the fight. The defender does not exhaust his token's hand while defending, whereas the attacker loses all the tokens he plays. And so, again, there is a strong asymmetry in this game between attack and defense. The only way for the attacker to get rid of strong defensive artillery tokens is to target them and eliminate them with his own artillery support. This is really harsh for the attacker. Hopefully, there is a little compensation for all these forever lost tokens. At the end of all battles, at the end of the turn, the defensive player gets his non-destroyed tokens back in his hand, and then both players get a compensation for their forever lost tokens. They draw from their pool 1 new token for every 2 tokens they lost. 1 for 2 fractions down. So, if they lost 1 token, they draw nothing. And that's how you handle your tokens. They are the fuel of your offensive, so you'd better think about it and plan a little before rushing in. Also, don't forget that tokens recovery happens at the end of the turn, after all battles are over. The chronology of battle, you see here, is for 1 battle only. So let's take an example. Red player attacks first with his left wing. Using 2 units, he must play at least 2 tokens. Let's say blue player doesn't play any defensive tokens. Red wins and spends his tokens. Now, red attacks to the right. A group attack with 3 units. Blue player decides to defend with 2 tokens. Note that red early token is useless because only 1 early unit participates in the battle and you need 2 units of the same name in order to play a named token. So red player plays it all together because he must play at least 3 tokens, but this one is useless. Of course, red player chooses to destroy the 2-gun blue token because this token being destroyed will be lost forever. And then all tokens are discarded without any further effect. And now, in the middle, red player would like to make a group attack with 4 units. But with only 3 tokens left in his hand, he can attack only with 3 units. 2 of the tokens he plays are useless, but still he must play them. 1 token per attacking unit. All these tokens are discarded after the attack and lost forever. Okay. And now it's the end of the turn and of all battles. For red player it's simple. All the tokens he played are forever lost. But still, he gets a compensation of 1 new token for every 2 lost. So he draws 4 tokens from his pool. Note that with 39 tokens in total, he won't be able to make a lot of such large attacks. Blue player loses only 1 unit, the one who was destroyed by enemy artillery fire. He gets no compensation because compensation is 1 token every 2 losses, so he has not enough lost tokens to get any compensation. And finally, he gets back his used token that was not destroyed back into his hand. Fine, and there's just one topic left before we part. As you have to manage your tokens pool, you must also keep an eye on your units inventory. Here are these units inventory for both players. At start, all units that enter the map have 2 colored flags. But as soon as they incur losses, they turn to grey flag units according to this diagram. For the first loss, the owning player can choose 2 grey flag units and let his opponent draw randomly the one that will replace the damaged unit. But if a grey flag unit takes a loss, there is no choice anymore. A 2 flag grey unit becomes a 1 flag and a 1 flag unit is eliminated. And so you can see some subtle differences between commands. As you see, Howard's command is pretty weak. As soon as one of its units takes 1 loss, it becomes a 1 flag unit. On the opposite, when a unit from Anderson's command takes a loss, the Confederate player can choose 2 units with 2 flags each, and so there is no random, and he is sure to keep a 2 flag unit after the loss. Note that if this unit takes a second loss, because it is already grey, it becomes a 1 flag unit even if there is a 2 flag unit left. And for Pender, there is 1 chance out of 2 that it becomes a 1 flag unit as soon as its first loss. And note that every lost unit is forever lost and doesn't go back to the block reserve. And so I let you think about this unit roster and the subtle differences between commands and players. I let you think about this until my next video, where we will take a step back and study more strategical considerations, withdrawal, reinforcements, general orders and time allocation. And we'll meet again very soon in my video number 3.